is going to introduce to you proportion basics. Many of you have studied proportions in the past, and we're going to start today with a few definitions. The first definition is for ratio. A ratio is simply a comparison of two quantities using division. There are a couple different ways that we can write a ratio. You can start with a fraction, like 2 over 3. You could use a colon, so it would be 2 to 3. Or you could literally write out the words 2 to 3. So for example, if we had a ratio of 2 girls to 3 boys, that would mean in the classroom, if we were to stand up 5 people, 2 of them would be girls and 3 of them would be boys. The next definition is a proportion. And a proportion is something that equates two ratios. So our definition that we'll write is two ratios that are equal. So if you write down the fraction 1/2, this is one that's pretty easy to think about. Make an equal sign and then just think of another fraction that is equivalent to 1/2. So an example might be 4/8. You could also write 3 over 6 or 2 over 4 or 6 over 12. Anything that is equal to 1/2. Now a proportion technically only has 2 pieces. So if you were going to write this out, you wouldn't have 2 different equal signs. You would just say 1/2 equals 4 over 8 or 1/2 equals 3 over 6. So another example would be 2/3 equals 4 over 6. Again, it's just two fractions or two ratios that are equal. We're going to extend this idea of a proportion, and we're going to learn actually how to solve proportions. And to do that, we need to know something called the cross products property. The property is stated as follows. If A over B equals C over D, then A times D equals B times C. Note when A and D are written right next to each other, that implies multiplication. So right next to that, let's just write down, all we're really doing here is cross multiplying. And some of you I know have gotten in the habit of kind of drawing some arrows to show the cross multiplying. So you might want to kind of draw the arrow to show that you're multiplying A times D, and then you're kind of draw an arrow to show that you're multiplying the B times the C. And those cross products are equal. That's why it's called the cross products property. Some of you may have learned something called the fish method. We're actually not going to use that, but this would relate to that fish method. And if you've never heard about that before, don't worry about it. All right, so a couple examples here. For these, we're just going to determine if the proportion is true or not. And all we have to do here is to check the cross products. So the first thing we're going to do is just multiply 3 times 48. We're going to put the equal sign, but above it we're going to put a little question mark because we don't know if they're equal yet. We're actually just testing that. So we don't want to say that they're equal before we know that they are. Then we test the other cross product, 4 times 36. We evaluate both sides. 3 times 48 is 144. 4 times 36 is 144. So now we can drop that question mark. We know that they are equal. So the answer is true. This proportion is true. Second one, we're going to do the same thing, 12 times 7. Equals with the question mark, because again, we're not sure that they're equal. That's what we're testing. And then our other cross product is 19 times 5. And it really doesn't matter the order. You could do 19 times 5 equals 12 times 7. You could do 7 times 12 equals 5 times 19. You just have to make sure that you're getting those cross products in there. So let's multiply. 12 times 7 is 84. 19 times 5 is 95. So here, we can't say that these are equal. So we're going to put a slash to the equal if we think back to our inequality unit. And this would be false. So this is not a proportion because by definition a proportion is 2 equal ratios. All right, number 3, I'm going to encourage you guys before you listen to the rest of this video, why don't you try this example on your own. So at this time maybe press pause and just give this a try. And then once you've tried it, you can walk through our solution here. So the solution would be to multiply 4 times 84. Bring down your equal sign, put your little question mark above that because again we're testing to see if they're equal. And 21 times 16 there, not 6. There we go. And then when we multiply the two sides here, 4 times 84 is 336. 21 times 16 is 336. So this is indeed a true proportion. And hopefully you were able to come up with that on your own. All right, so once we've looked at true proportions, now we're actually going to look at solving proportions. So to solve a proportion, we have to cross multiply, And we're always going to set up an equation. And here's where I was talking about some of you have learned a fish method. It's kind of a crazy crisscross to solve. We don't want to do that. We want to focus back on equations. So in number 4 here, if we cross multiply, I'm going to start with the cross product that has the variable, just because that'll naturally put the variable on the left-hand side. So I'm going to multiply 4 times y. And we always write the number in front of the variable. So you should write 4y equals, and then on the other side we're going to do 6 times 82. So if we simplify that, we get 4y equals 492. And you can just jump to the second step. You don't have to write out that first line of work. I'm assuming that most of you can just jump right to that. So now this is just a simple one-step equation. And to solve this, we want to divide both sides by 4. Now we've noticed that some of you have been subtracting 4. Recognize that when you have 4 right next to a variable, it's multiplication. So you have to undo that by using division. So simplify both sides. We have y equals 123. Next example, we're going to do the same thing. The variable's in a different spot, but that doesn't change how we work it. I can still start with the cross product that has the variable. So I can do 5a times 2. And then that's going to be equal to the other cross product, which is 3 times 15. And again, the order doesn't matter. You can interchange the two sides of the equal sign. You can interchange the two things that you're multiplying. So if we simplify, we get 10a equals 45. Divide both sides by 10. And a equals 4.5. Now this is a change. In the past, we've been forcing you guys to write everything as a fraction answer. For this unit, we haven't worked with decimals a lot, so we're actually going to go ahead and use decimal answers. So if you ever get a fraction that is repeating or has, lots of decimal places, we're just going to ask that you round to the nearest hundredth. So you will be allowed to use decimals. All right, our last example here. In fact, this problem actually has a decimal within the proportion. We're going to start with the cross product involving the variable. So I've got 1.5r equals 48. And we're just going to jump to this step here. I'm assuming that you guys are getting the cross multiplying idea. To solve this, we have to divide both sides by 1.5. And we end up with our final answer of 32.